Okay, I want to welcome everyone. I do know a lot of you, some I don't. Of course, I'm Dan Martin with the Village of New Lenox. I'm our Safe Community Coordinator, and I chair our coalition here at the Village. And just a really brief background about our coalition. We've been around since January of 2009, and we work on injuries, anything that creates injuries and deaths in our community. We study the data, and we try to create programs to reduce or eliminate those injuries. So we've created some task groups. We have emergency preparedness, motor vehicle traffic safety, suicide prevention and awareness, older adult falls, and then this one, substance use initiatives, is the one, substance use prevention is the one that this group created for tonight for Your Light Still Shines. So we meet on a regular basis. Our coalition meets on a regular basis. Our task groups meet on a regular basis. If anyone wants additional information, feel free to reach out to me. We do have a Facebook page. There's information on the Village of New Lenox website. So if you are interested, if you're not already a member of our coalition, please feel free to reach out and contact me about that. So for tonight, the Q&A, I kind of talked to it a little bit when some of you were on early. What we'll do with the Q&A for tonight, after our three panelists speak, throughout the presentation, what I will be doing, if you have questions, please put them into the chat box, and I'll be pulling out the questions and putting them into a Word document. So at the end of our panel discussion, I can facilitate a discussion, with our panelists based on your questions. And then also at that time, I'll unmute everyone, and you guys can go ahead and ask verbal questions of our panelists as well. Dr. Kathleen Burke from the Office of Will County Substance Use Initiative, she's going to join us tonight. She's already on the call, and she's going to talk about the Narcan training. We've been a great partner with Dr. Burke for some time now in offering the Narcan training and distribution of Narcan, so we certainly appreciate her being here tonight. And then Marta Keene from Will County. Hi, Marta, I see you. And Will County Green. Marta's here tonight. Marta has been a great partner to our village and coalition for some time as well. And Marta is here tonight to talk about unwanted medication takeback. And then in addition, at the end, everyone's gonna hear all this great information and then say, wow, this is great. How can I reach out to our speakers? How can I reach out to some of these great organizations that participate with our coalition? We're gonna have a list of resources available at the end. It's a little PowerPoint. We'll put them up. I'd like to thank Stephanie Masika from U Chicago Medicine at Ingalls for putting together the list of resources. And I have everyone's email addresses. So what I'll do is I'll convert that PowerPoint into a PDF, and I will email that to everyone as well. So don't worry about rushing to write all the names and email addresses and phone numbers down. I will send that to you via email as well. So with that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just go over the bios for our wonderful speakers tonight, and then I will introduce them individually and then give them a turn to speak. But our first speaker is going to be Necia Newcomb. She's very grateful recovering substance user with 6+ years of recovery. Necia was opioid dependent for a long time and never believed that she could become sober. Necia is currently working full-time, a mother of 2 beautiful girls, a loving wife of 4+ years, and a homeowner. Necia lives her life to bring awareness to the seriousness of addiction and accompanying mental health issues that result from addiction. Necia's goal is to help end the stigma of drug addiction and help others achieve sobriety. So we certainly appreciate Necia being here tonight. Chaplain Christopher Druce Jones will present experiencing and coping with grief and loss during COVID-19. Christopher Druce Jones, Director of Chaplaincy, joined a Rosecrans team in July of 2017. He has 20 years experience working in the Northern Illinois Conference of United Methodist Church. Christopher earned a Bachelor in Arts in Philosophy and Religion from Dillard University in New Orleans and a Master of Divinity from the University of Dubuque Theological Seminary in Iowa. Christopher specializes in organizational management and administration, leadership development, congregational care, small group facilitation, and church revitalization. Christopher also served as a personal management specialist in the U.S. Army and U.S. Army Reserves from 1988 to 1997. And Christopher, we do appreciate your service. Thank you for your service. And lastly, we have Jessie Monreal. She currently works for the Inpatient Addiction Unit at Ingalls. She has her CADC credentials as well as an associate's degree in addiction studies. Jessie spent 4 years at Stepping Stones in Joliet, first as an intern, then as a counselor, and the last 2.5 years as case manager. Jessie celebrated 7 years in recovery on July 30th. She has been writing since she was young and has several published articles on the topics of addiction and mental health, as well as a blog. Jessie is the mother of a 12-year-old son, Shane, and they live in Orland Park. So again, I want to thank all of our speakers for being here tonight, wonderful backgrounds. And again, after we do the Q&A, then we'll have on Dr. Burke and Marta Keene, and then we'll do our presentation of our resources and then our wrap up. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Necia to give her presentation. Welcome, Necia.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. How are you? My name is Necia, and I'm very grateful to be here. So in my lifetime, I've noticed that when addiction is mentioned, mental health is mentioned, overdose awareness, things like that, a lot of people turn their head. They get very uncomfortable. They want to brush it under the rug, things like that. And I just want to live my life to kind of change that and to help others realize the importance that it is to have awareness in that and to brush away that ignorance. Growing up, my family and I had a lot of struggles. Both of my parents did have drug addiction. They did a lot of alcoholic tendencies, and my father wasn't around. And myself growing up, I was very angry. I was very different, and my family didn't understand exactly what was happening with me. Why I had violent tendencies, why I was always upset and kind of acting out in school. And they just kind of ignored it as, you know, teenage, that's how teenagers are, it's just a phase. So I never got any mental health treatment that I needed growing up. And it just continued to get worse and unravel while growing up, which eventually did lead me to getting addicted to heroin at a very young age. I was addicted to heroin at the age of 17. And I just continued to go because my family didn't really look into mental health issues. My father wasn't there. And it just continued to progress there. I was doing very poorly in school. I was self-harming. I was just unraveling, and it was just allowed to be that way out of the fear of mental health and not understanding. So that continued to happen for a long time, and my life just continued to unravel for a very long time, and it just got worse and worse. So in high school, I was constantly in trouble. I was acting out because I didn't know how to ask for help. So once I graduated high school, right away I was full-blown drug addiction. I didn't get any mental health help until I did attempt suicide at a young age. And I was institutionalized in a mental health facility. And in there, I was introduced to a 12-step program and introduced to some medication and some diagnoses that helped me understand why I was the way that I was and why I was using drugs and alcohol to alleviate my resentment and my fear and my anger and all these things that I had inside me that I didn't understand for so long, and my family didn't try to understand either. Unfortunately, once I was out of there and back on the streets, I continued to use drugs, and I continued to live in that vicious cycle of addiction, which is fear, anger, use, trying to cope with those feelings that, you know, at a young age, we don't know how to deal with them, and we're scared. We're not able to face them on our own, and drugs and alcohol, we feel as though our only release. And I continued to live my life like that for a while. It was always the same cycle, in and out of treatment, in and out of jails, institutions, overdose. Narcan did save my life 3 times. I carry Narcan with me now at all times. Dr. Burke has a very awesome grant going on right now, which we distribute Narcan to the community for free through Will County. So if anybody needs any, she's going to be doing a presentation on that, which is outstanding. I'm a member of the team. There's 9 of us. But so from the ages of 16 to 19, I was in full-blown heroin addiction. Right now, I am the age of 26, and I have 6.5 years of sobriety. This last time that I did go to jail, I was pregnant, and I had relapsed during my pregnancy. I was lost, I was alone, I was scared, and I did not know what to do. I was hopeless, and I was angry with myself for relapsing. I had all the tools that I needed. I was beating myself up. I felt hopeless. I was alone. I didn't understand why I couldn't just grasp and hold on to and understand everything that I had learned throughout the years of in and out of being in mental health centers and drug rehabilitation centers, and why I couldn't just get it like the people around me. They say in 12-step programs and in treatment centers, you do have to hit your rock bottom, and everybody's rock bottom is different. I do not believe that everyone's rock bottom has to be super tragic. It just needs to be enough for you to wake up and hit your knees and have that surrender and to find that willingness needed to throw your hands up and ask wholeheartedly, I'm ready, I need help, I can't live this way anymore. I was on such a vicious road to death, and I knew it. My family was scared. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. And it was in that time in Will County that I was able to realize, hey, there's a way out, and I have all the capability of grasping it if I ask for help. And at that point, I had to take a look not only at my drug addiction and why I was this way, but my mental health, and I had to address it, and I had to dig deep inside of myself and ask for help and, turn everything over, which is a lot of it I was holding on to from childhood traumas, from growing up that I just didn't want to talk about and I wanted to hold on to. And so now with me, I'm very vocal on mental health issues, any childhood traumas. We have to address it. We have to be open. We have to be honest and willing. If anyone ever needs help, to ask for it, to find a counselor, a psychiatrist, a group, a 12-step program, a church. There's so many resources available. There's not one certain way for anyone to recover, but we cannot recover alone. Everyone was so sure that I wasn't gonna get out, and I didn't think I was gonna get out either. But for me, I had to grab a hold of strong women in my community. I had to grab a hold of a psychiatrist and dig deep and find my way out on my own. So this last time, I went to treatment, I went to outpatient, I went to sober living. I was gone for a year, and I had to move away and to find myself a solid ground to stand on. And now I'm living a life that I never thought that I'd be able to live, which is a beautiful life where I'm able to help people. I'm involved in the community. I run a self-help group on the internet. It's called Help Me, Help Me. Help me help myself by helping others. For anybody that struggles with addiction, mental health issues, just feeling alone. Those feelings can drag us so far deep and down, especially with COVID going on right now. Everybody is isolated. Forced isolation is just as bad as isolating on your own. With COVID going on, meetings were closed, church was closed, schools were closed, and we were all forced into our homes. And it is exponentially shooting the numbers of not only overdoses, but relapses, of psychiatric stops. Everything is skyrocketing right now. And it's just so important for us to come together and to hold hands and to be there for one another. I can't stress that enough. I would never be able to be who I am, where I am, go through and overcome the things that I've overcome by myself. I have such a strong army of women with me, men with me, sobriety people, people from my church that are here to uplift me when they notice that if I'm isolating or I'm feeling down or if somebody's being quiet. It's just so important to remember to reach out and to always be kind. So like I said, with the Narcan, we do go all over Will County and we offer the Narcan for free. We just want everyone to have it in their first aid kits. I'm very big on that. I always have it with me in my purse. I always have boxes available for others. I'm a full-time mother. I've been married for 4 years. Both of my daughters have come with me to meetings. They have come and watched me speak places. They have come help me donate things. I just want them to grow up and to understand that addiction is very real. In my 6 years of sobriety, just 2 days ago, I buried somebody number 68. So 68 people have overdosed and passed away, people that I knew personally, that I loved, that I knew in and out of the rooms, in and out of treatment, in and out of my Help Me group. It's just, the numbers are so high. Last year, 79,000 Americans have passed away. That's over 100 Americans every single day are overdosing. We have to come together and hold hands, and we have to not be quiet. I am always shouting from the rooftops, we have to open up and be aware. We cannot continue to live in fear and in ignorance and to turn our eye to overdose, drug addiction, mental health issues. We have to come together as a community. I love everything that you guys do and that you guys have this event. Just to spread this awareness is so, so, so important. And for anybody that's lost a loved one, I know your pain, and I'm so sorry that you had to deal with this. But let's just come together and do what we can to help stop anybody else in their tracks who's stuck in addiction, and to realize, hey, I can overcome this. I can turn around. There's so many resources available to anybody that's willing to take it. Treatment, detox, any facility is open. We just have to reach out and get the resources together for them. I just want to help stop addiction, overdoses. We've lost so many people in this community, in America, across the world. Let's just do what we can to come together and to stop that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Necia, thank you so much. I'm sure that I am speaking for everyone when I say thank you so much for everything that you're doing, not only for being here tonight, but for everything that you've done. You've taken, some negatives in your life and turned them into positives for others. So thank you so much for doing all that you do. Okay, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Chaplain Christopher Druce Jones. Welcome again, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And there we go. All right. So as many of you have heard and experienced, we're in the midst of a pandemic. And there's been such a tremendous loss and a lot of change that has happened over the year, over this time frame. And one of the things that is not being talked about is the experience of grief. So tonight's presentation is, how do we understand it? What can we do to help ourselves in the midst of this pandemic as we experience so many losses and lots of changes? So in understanding grief, it is natural and normal. It's an emotional reaction to change or loss of any kind. And contrary to popular belief, it is not a condition, it's not a personality disorder, and it's not an illness. There is nothing wrong with anyone who experiences and journeys through grief. We've experienced lots of loss. If you've listened to the radio, read the news, watched television, you can see the effects of COVID-19 and how it relates to all of the changes and loss. And many of us can just simply fill in the blank of all of the types of loss that we have experienced and have heard and seen. As a result of this loss, as you look at this list, you can see that there are lots of various emotional responses. And if it looks overwhelming, just reading it, it is because it is overwhelming when you consider all of the changes, all of the losses, all of the experiences, all of the anticipated losses that many people have experienced in communities, and some communities and families more than others. So the responses vary and will continue to vary, just as each and every one of us are unique. So with this emotional response, loss has a way of just bringing out all sorts of the emotions that we experience. The uncertainty of the future, unresolved grief and pain that Some of us may have thought we worked through, and to discover that we still have some unresolved grief and pain, and the reality of the present, the pain and shock of what is really going on, and that sense of not having control and being able to control this pandemic that we are experiencing. There is a process in it in terms of grief. There is a change or a loss, which is the event or the situation that occurs. There is the grief itself, which is the response to the change or the loss. And then there's the coping, the actions that we take to resolve grief that happens over time. And contrary to popular belief, grief is not an event. It is indeed a process. Society, in most cases, views grief as an event. They want you to be over it. There's a certain time frame you have to grieve, and you're supposed to go back to work and get back to normal, as though it's just this particular event. But the reality is, it is a process, and it is not something we get over. But grief is a process that we go through in an effort to cope with and process the change or the loss that we have experienced. I want to present to you something that might be new to many of you. You may not have heard it before. It's entitled STERBS. And I want to take a little longer time to talk a little bit about STERBS, an acronym for short-term energy relieving behaviors. Short-term energy relieving behaviors. So these are the particular go-to behaviors when we experience a loss or a change. And they usually, it's easy to engage in STERBS rather than feeling our emotions. They help to numb the pain. Some people will view these as distractions, but all of us have a particular or few STERBS that we engage in whenever we experience some form of change or loss. So what are some of these examples of STERBS? Well, as you look at the list, you can see anywhere from extreme sports to alcohol, excessive shopping, online video games, gambling, harmful or dangerous sex, or fill in the blank. And it can go on and on in terms of the energy relieving behaviors that we engage in. Now, I want to say this: in and of itself, STERBS are not bad. In and of themselves, they do serve a purpose. However, we have to keep in mind they are short-term energy relieving behaviors. But there's a problem. There's a problem with STERBS. So STERBS create an illusion of resolve, causing us to forget or bury our emotions. In other words, they appear to work. Oh, this is working. I'm calmer now. Everything is going well, and there's no issue. Let's get back to normal. Everything's fine. Secondly, they are short term. They don't last, and they truly don't deal with the true emotional issue. In other words, the issue is we are utilizing STERBS for a long-term process, and they're designed to be short-term in nature. Lastly, they do nothing to remove the cork that is jammed in the spout. They do not get to the true issue. They don't really address our issue and pain around grief. So with that in mind, we have to watch our STERBS. We have to be mindful of them, be aware of the fact that we're engaging in it, and then recognizing also that STERBS won't resolve or fix the issue around the pain in terms of our grief, the loss. So they can lead us into this unresolved experience of grief. And that unresolved grief is that when the natural grieving process is interrupted. And also, we can have more severe and intense grieving experiences that's not lessening, but actually often is getting worse. And then also the unresolved grief, it interferes with our ability to function normally in everyday life, because STERBS in essence is prolonging the actual addressing the situation surrounding the loss or the change. So what can we do to help us as we continue to experience loss, as we continue to experience change, as we continue to hear about all of the things that's just being piled on top of each other as we are still in this pandemic, not knowing when it's going to end? What can we do to help us cope when we are in the thick of it? Uh, so I want to talk a little bit about the ABCs of coping. There are at least three common approaches to coping with grief during this particular time, which I feel that will be helpful and will actually, I believe, make a difference as we work the process of journeying through this time. So the first is awareness. It's important for us to truly be aware of our thoughts and our feelings regarding whatever changes or losses that we have experienced, and really how they are impacting us on a daily basis. And a few questions to consider is, are you able to identify those feelings, those thoughts by name? Do they happen at a particular time of the day, or are they around particular situations? Are these thoughts, these feelings that I have, are they interfering with my daily activity? And the other is, can I truly acknowledge the reality that I'm grieving and that this is directly related to the grief of the loss or the change that I experience? So being aware that we're actively grieving and being able to say it, I'm grieving, I'm having a grieving moment. This is the first step of coping with grief, becoming aware and being aware of what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and how it's impacting our lives. The second ABC of coping is that of balance. It is true, our lives, our families, our communities, our schedules have been thrown off balance due to this experience of the pandemic, due to change, due to loss. And the question is, as we recognize that we are in an unbalanced state, um, how can we help to rebalance the thoughts and the emotions of sadness and pain with joyful, happy thoughts and feelings? What ways that we could shift or modify routines or activities that can be explored or developed to counterbalance the weight of grief that we experiencing in our lives? And it is important to strive to maintain that balance of sadness and joy, so that our time, particularly if we're working remotely, that our lives are not filled with so much sadness and not any joy. So it's important to strive to maintain that balance in our lives in an effort to cope with grief. The last ABC of coping is connection. We are truly communal beings. We love and thrive in community, and we need community and connection. And so the question is, in this pandemic in which we find ourselves, as we are exposed to the unknowns, where change is constant, where loss, we just keep hearing about loss on top of loss, how can we maintain connections, not only with ourselves, but also how can we maintain connections with others? What are some creative ways that we can connect with people using electronic devices, or maintaining 6 feet social distance in addition to wearing masks, and strive to spend time with another person? Or are we able to reconnect and with ourselves and engage in activities that bring joy and fulfillment? Are we even able to um, be open to new activities and recreational leisure activities that we could engage in an effort to help us to maintain connection with ourselves? And then lastly, are there particular support groups or affinity groups, faith groups, higher power? How can we creatively connect with those in light of um, limited occupation of certain particular businesses and uh, establishments? So it is important for us, because we are so connectional, uh, to explore and find creative ways in which we can connect with ourselves, and also to connect with others, to maintain and receive the support and help that we need during this time. It is important to note that the ABCs of coping with grief, they do not fix grief, but they do help us. They do help us to work through those thoughts. They help us to work through the emotions surrounding the loss and the change. Uh, they help us to not be so burdened with the uncertainty of the present and the future, and burdened with so much sadness because of the loss and change. And they really do help us to move along in a process until we can get to some form of normalcy, or a new normal. Um, it is important to be open to being aware, to work in a process of balancing our emotions and activities and schedules, and also to strive to maintain a connection with ourselves and with others. Lastly, I want to share a couple of additional considerations that I feel would be helpful as we get to a place of normalcy and a new normal. It is true that because of the enormity of the loss and change that we've experienced in this time, I am grateful to hear of telehealth. And it's been a wonderful gift to many communities across the nation. And um, working through the ABCs alone can be challenging. And sometimes we truly do need that other professional skilled help. And so the other considerations I want to offer is for folks to consider and promote and encourage, number one, grief counseling. Uh, and it's a one-on-one individual time with the counselor to help people cope with all of the issues surrounding grief and loss, and even anticipated loss or change. And there are so many counselors that are available and willing to engage in telehealth just to keep everybody safe. But it's also offering the opportunity for people to be able to express and share and work through all of the issues and concerns that come with experiencing grief, loss, and change. And then lastly, which is a creative way that it'll have to be done, but I do want to highlight grief support groups, groups where folks can come together to share their thoughts, to share their feelings and emotion, to provide support, who are experiencing the same situations, and to have that commonality of encouraging, supporting one another and helping them to come to terms with their loss. And I'm convinced that with grief counseling, grief support, with the ABCs of coping, with understanding what grief is, with learning more about STERBS and becoming aware of STERBS and watching them, all of that together, I believe, can provide a foundation and a process for people to work through the enormity of the loss and change that we have been, and for who knows however long that we'll be experiencing during this pandemic. So I want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to share this coping with grief and loss during the pandemic. And it's my pleasure to be with you tonight.
Chaplain, thank you so much. That was great information. I really enjoyed the STERBS acronym and explanation, the ABCs of coping, and all the great information that you provided. Our good friends at Rosecrans are very fortunate to have you on their team for sure. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'd like to introduce Jesse Monreal. Jesse?
Am I on? Am I unmuted? I think I accidentally muted myself.
You are on board.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for having me do this again. I really appreciate it. So first of all, this is going to segue pretty nicely from what the chaplain was just talking about, that last little piece about the importance of connecting with the community, because I was really trying to think of something to talk about that kind of related to addiction, but related to everyone. And so what I came up with was looking at addiction as a disease of disconnection. You know, there's obviously addiction's very complex, and we have things like cravings and triggers and all the neurobiological things, but disconnection is a huge, huge piece of addiction for just about everyone. And a lot of us are susceptible to it right now as well. So the Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel, said that the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And I was thinking about that statement in regards to addiction and isolation and disconnection. And it kind of occurred to me that along those same lines, you know, is that the opposite of isolation is not company. The opposite of isolation is connection. So, you know, simply being in the presence of other people even does not ensure that we're connecting. Addiction and disconnection are very tied together and very related, like I said. So for some people, it starts first with disconnection. And I'll talk a little bit about why some people struggle with that and what one of the common reasons for that is. But when you talk to people with substance use disorders, a lot of them, you hear words when they talk about growing up, you hear the words different, you hear outcast, you hear other, you know, that they identify as having felt like on the fringes for whatever reason, and not even necessarily because physically or racially or financially they didn't fit in, they just on the inside felt different. And being as we are, the social creatures that we are, and being that it is wired into us to want to be a part of a group, that's a really painful feeling for people, especially a child who can't even necessarily make sense of that. And then when you add to that, you know, puberty and teenage kids, and then this coinciding with when people are experimenting with substances, this is where the groundwork gets laid for a lot of people, because those words, different and outcast and other, they denote separation from the group, and they denote disconnection. So the introduction of the substances at this point provides several advantages in that it, number one, it creates the illusion of connection, and substance use can create the illusion of connection in a few different ways. Number one, it can, so with the intoxication level in and of itself, you know, one of the things that comes with intoxication of almost every substance is the lowering of the inhibitions. Okay, it is the, you know, when you're talking about central nervous system depressants like alcohol and things like that, it gives people the ability to relax, to loosen up. You know, people who feel socially awkward, this provides a way out of that. So it creates feelings in them, you know, that loss of inhibition or feelings of heightened confidence that allow them to be more social. And so then they start correlating substances with connecting with other people. And that starts to solidify in someone's head that I can't connect with other people if I don't use this substance. There are so many people who get pulled into specifically alcoholism because it's readily available, because it's so present at social gatherings, and because it alleviates that discomfort that maybe they're struggling with. Another thing that it can do is that the use of substances provide relief from what you're feeling, if that's what you're using them for. So as opposed to, you know, trying to create that feeling of connection, we can alleviate the pain that we feel from feeling different, and we can disconnect from being disconnected by using substances. So this is where it starts to cause an issue with our relationships with other people. But another thing that's happening is, you know, it creates a disconnection when you're struggling with substances. You're disconnected from yourself. You know, assuming you ever really felt that you knew who you were, you had an identity to begin with, which once again, a lot of substance users say that they don't, that they never had a clear idea of who they were, that they never felt comfortable in their own skin, and that a lot of times they were just trying to be liked and they got stuck there. So that disconnection from self is why it's so hard to connect with others even when they're around them. And one of the phrases that, if you say it in a room full of people with addiction, and you will see their eyes light up and an understanding like you wouldn't believe, is the phrase alone in a room full of people. And this is why I say that company is not the opposite of isolation, because, you know, I know there were plenty of times where I was in a room full of people. I was at parties and I was in my head. I was alone. There were just people there, but I was by myself. I was still isolated, you know, so it's not, it gives you that constant disconnect from you and from other people. So for a lot of us, that can come from, where's that start, is one of the most common causes of people who struggle with disconnection is trauma, whether that's childhood trauma, whether that's diagnosed PTSD. But some people are dealing with these feelings of disconnection and disassociation from the start. Feeling disconnected is almost always identified as a symptom of people with trauma. The ability to check out, dissociating is the word if you're talking about it in terms of a defense mechanism. The ability to check out is a protective measure, is a defense that people utilize in situations of trauma to avoid the pain of what's happening to them. That's the thing about a lot of defense mechanisms that later in life cause us problems. They served a purpose at one point. you know, we went inside of our shell, or we disconnected from ourselves, or, you know, we walled ourselves off or regressed. We did it in an effort to cope with something that we were going through that was difficult, when we didn't necessarily have the tools to cope with that. So that ability to check out might have provided some temporary relief in the moment, but this can become a patterned behavior, and then it can become an automatic response for some people, to where they're doing it when they don't want to do it, when it's not convenient to do it, when it's not appropriate to do it, like at their child's birthday party, or during a work meeting, or when they're trying to forge an intimate relation with somebody, and they're constantly checking out. And it's not even something, or at the slightest indication of whatever a trigger might be, whether for someone that's pain, of abandonment or rejection, or you know, fear of being judged, it causes that response. And the disconnection that people with trauma have and can be faced with, it leads them to struggle with the ability to regulate their own emotions. And specifically, they struggle with regulating their bodily responses to their emotions. So a lot of times they're very overwhelmed. You know, somebody who's dealing with a flashback, or somebody who's triggered in their trauma memories, the sensations that they get, the physical sensations that they get are too much. And so a lot of times they're going to be vacillating between being totally overwhelmed by their feelings and totally checked out. There isn't that like medium, it's just back and forth, and that's exhausting for people. It's very exhausting for people. But if you look at how overwhelmed they get by their emotions, of course they're going to check out, if that's the only, because it's way too overstimulating and exhausting to try to bear that for more than any short amount of time. So why is this also relevant right now? As both Necia and the chaplain brought up, we have all been disconnected from one another, not by choice, not by any fault of our own, and totally out of left field. You know, we're not only disconnected either, we are overwhelmed, we are anxious, we're scared, we're angry, we are inundated by negativity, by fear, by divisiveness from one another. It's like never ending. You can go on the news, you can go on social media. It's so overwhelming, all of the things that are happening right now, for anyone to deal with. Jobs have been lost, people's finances are shot, people can't go to work, they don't have their child care. Parents who never wanted to be teachers ever to begin with now have to be teachers, and it's hard for them, and it's hard for the kids too. We're wearing face masks. We can't see the faces of the people that we're talking to, and we're meant to. There are social cues that are there. There are things that we do when we're looking at one another and communicating with one another and connecting with one another that we're being deprived of right now. And new normal or not, it's hard. It's hard to adjust to. And then when you add to that everything that's going on, you know, in-person support for people, we have this now, right? We have Zoom. We have, this is better than nothing. I'm not going to pretend it's the same thing, because it's not. It's better than nothing. And for a while, but we had nothing. There was no behavioral health services. There was no church. There was no IOP. There was no 12-step meetings, but the liquor stores and the dispensaries were open. And this, like Necia brought up, you know, people are struggling right now. People are relapsing, and people are using. And then when it comes to that, as far as the people who already struggled, nobody's immune. So there are people who weren't struggling, who the amount of people who are going to walk out of 2020 who did not have a substance use disorder, who very well might now, because they lost their job, because they couldn't see their therapist, because they're trying to figure out how to teach a child when they're not a teacher, and the only place that was open was the liquor store and nowhere else where they could get support. This is not a good environment for us to be trying to deal with, you know. And then when you add to that, our use of social media a lot of times it's not healthy. and it makes us feel worse, and it has become a very toxic environment. And you can try to prune that and control it, but realistically, with all of the things that are going on right now, it's really overwhelming. So what does disconnection feel like for anyone? And to identify if maybe this is something that's starting to get to you. Words, again, that come up with people with substance use disorders a lot. You hear words like hollow. You hear words like empty. You hear the word void a lot. Okay, so sometimes it's the inability to even label your feelings or your emotions because you're not connected with yourself. The amount of times somebody's asked me, but how are you feeling? And I go, I don't know. That's something that happens with people a lot. If you actually stop someone and you go, something, well, that pissed me off. So are you mad? Well, no, not really. A lot of times we don't even know what we're feeling, but it can look like boredom, constant state of unease, restlessness, apathy, anhedonia, and maybe you can see it in, and what the chaplain brought up, where what I have listed as things that disconnect are basically what he called the STERBS. So we start engaging in these compulsive behaviors to alleviate the pain of feeling disconnected. And he talked about it as a way to alleviate the pain of grief. It's just a way to alleviate pain. But some of these things can lead to that disconnection being created or being worsened for those who already struggled. And so what are things that disconnect us? That's going to be excessive social media or technology use. It's going to be using drugs and alcohol either to escape or to, again, create that illusion of connection when it's not really there. Toxic relationships, and this can be whether it's just sex or whether it's people who get locked into a relationship that consumes them to the point where that's all there is, and they're disconnected from themselves and from the other people in their life because they're consumed by a relationship. And then talking about the trauma, not addressing past trauma, that will cause, even in the event of maybe alleviating the substance use, people who don't address the trauma that was underneath it, they still struggle with these feelings. It still continues to be a problem for them that affects their quality of life, their relationships, their job. So what are some things that we can do to establish connection or to reconnect if we've lost it? Well, what are some things that we can connect to and the ways that we can do it? So we need to connect with ourselves. It's very difficult to connect with other people at all if you're not somewhat connected to yourself, to how you're feeling, to who you are, to what you want. And some of the ways that we can connect with ourselves are things like mindfulness, meditation, breath work. Those are all ways to just be quiet and connect with yourself. And that's very hard for people to do when their minds are so restless. But as hard as it is in the beginning, because of that restlessness, it is one of the things that really can provide relief from it. We can connect with our community. That can be through our 12-step groups. That can be through volunteer organizations. That can be through church. That can be through our personal relationships. This is not an option. Okay, social connections are in our DNA. We need them. It's a non-negotiable. And this is what we've lost, and we have to do our best to try to regain it and keep an eye on one another and make sure that we're not just mindlessly going like this through Facebook and commenting and arguing with people in this weird way of communicating that we were never meant to have, and upsetting ourselves, so that's the actual connection with other people. We need that. We can connect with our spirituality, whether that's God, whether it's Buddha, whatever your higher power is. Whether you identify with an organized religion or not, we need to identify with some sort of spiritual connection. Connecting with our body, whether that's through yoga, exercise, making sure, just taking care of yourselves, because a lot of us don't pay attention to that, and then we don't feel well, and that's another important piece. And another thing that's great for people is connecting with nature, whether that's gardening, hiking, traveling. If you have the opportunity, these are things that, give us the opportunity to connect with ourselves, with other people, with the world that we live in the way that we're meant to interface, and not in the way that we've kind of been turning to at this point. Checking out is not a solution to a problem. It does not heal. Whatever it is that you're checking out from, it's going to be there waiting for you when you come out of the fog. And anyone who's come out of addiction and who's been medicating pain, they'll tell you that. Pain that was 10 years old, 20 years old, it's right there when you get sober, waiting for you to deal with it because it's totally unprocessed. So checking out is not the solution, and numbness is not a life. You know, so we connect when we share a laugh, when we share tears, when we smile at one another, looking at somebody else and seeing mutual understanding. These are things that are very, very important to us as the social beings that we are. And whenever we get the chance to get back to the way things were, who knows, you know, I hope we're all so grateful for that. And maybe we can look at this as frustrating and exhausting and let's face it, awful as a lot of it was. It will make us grateful for the things that we probably have taken for granted for a very long time. But just making sure that we are reaching out to one another and keeping an eye on one another and trying to put a lid on these connections that actually cause more isolation and exacerbate our loneliness. You know, reaching out to people when you're struggling. Don't just go scroll on social media. Don't just pour a giant glass of wine. Don't take an extra Xanax. You know, say, I need somebody right now. I need a person to communicate with. Don't be afraid to do that. There are resources out there, whatever group or organization or self-help, whatever you identify with, reach out to them. You know, because we are losing people left and right. Like Necia said, and it's not going to stop if we don't help one another. So I really appreciate you guys letting me talk about this. And I really enjoyed listening to Necia and the chaplain. So thank you guys very much. I'm very grateful.
Jesse, thank you so much. That's amazing. I always enjoy listening to you speak. You're just so down to earth and so real and always provide such good advice. So I look forward to the Q&A with you and Necia and the chaplain here shortly. Thank you again. Sure. We'll hold the Q&A just for a few minutes, and we have Dr. Burke. We'll get Dr. Burke up to talk a little bit about Narcan training, and then Marta thereafter, Dr. Burke. So Dr. Burke, can you provide a little information about Narcan training? Dr. Burke, are you there?
I'm sorry, boy, I just went on with 5 minutes. I thought I'm gonna have to repeat that, and it was so good the first time. Anyway, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now, Dan?
Yeah, you're perfect.
Okay. So to repeat what I said, thank you very much to all the speakers tonight. Their points were very understood by people who are working in the field and for people who aren't working in the field. It's an important time right now. The disease of addiction is critical. We're at a period in time where we're changing strategies and we're changing the way we communicate. It has its positives and it has its negatives, and we need to keep that in mind. One of the harm reduction strategies that's really important right now is for us to have naloxone. We want Narcan in the hands of every single person in Will County. And the reason for that, it's the same thing as a fire extinguisher or an AED for heart. If there is a relapse and someone overdoses, we want to bring them back to life in order to support them until they can get assistance and get on with their life. Naloxone is an antidote to overdose. It starts the breathing in the lungs again when someone has taken too many opioids. So we're going to be offering a class in how to, what naloxone is, what are the risk factors for an opioid overdose, and how do you deliver naloxone. on November 3rd at 7 o'clock virtually. And at that time, we'll go through all the training that you need to be able to provide naloxone. And then 2 days later, we have a pickup at New Lenox City Hall where you can then come and pick up your naloxone. Every time I train somebody, you each get a box of naloxone free, and in each box is 2 doses. We are making sure that everybody in the community is prepared if someone in their life or someone in their community or someone at the store may overdose, so that we can help. It is the one most effective tool in getting people to keep going in their life and not lose them. So I want to thank all of you. And Dan, is there any more information that I can provide?
No, that's great. I'll put more information out on the Narcan training coming up. And, I would just like to thank you, Dr. Burke. You've been a great partner, to our village and our Safe Community Coalition. You've provided training. I want to look at the numbers, but I want to say at least 500 people we've trained here, thanks to you and your team. So we appreciate you and all that you do for our community as well as Will County.
Thank you. And I just want to also thank my rapid response team. Some of you are on here. That's a group of recovery coaches, people in recovery that have been spending their days and nights in the community passing out Narcan. They are usually at a food bank where where food is being processed or given away, and we're providing naloxone. If anybody is interested in having our team available, just let me know, because we want to be everywhere. And that group has distributed 700 boxes of naloxone this past month. So we're going to get it done, people. We're Will County and we're going to get it done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. And please do stick around for the Q&A. I'm sure there'll be some follow-up questions as well. Okay, another great partner is Marta Keene at Will County and Will County Green. We were very fortunate to be the first community in Will County through our police department to start an unwanted medication take-back program. So a lot of the things that the speakers talked about really start with some of these medications, whether they're over-the-counter or prescribed, and we really need to get those types of medications, disposed of properly. So that's what Marta's here tonight to talk about. So I'll turn it over to Marta.
Thank you, Dan. And I have to say that I really was moved by the speakers, and it was great to listen to. And it is scary that we're seeing this increase in use because of this pandemic situation. I want to say that the nice thing about the medication take back program is that it gives people an outlet so that they do not have things that they're no longer using in their medicine cabinet, on their countertops, what have you, because you can take them to you in often cases. There's over 30 locations in Will County right now that you can actually drop medications off and hopefully prevent someone from misusing them, or if they're trying to stop themselves, get rid of them, make it easier, that kind of thing. And then also just the idea that if you do have someone coming in your home who's more susceptible to using them, that they're not there to take them. So the program, as Dan said, we started in 2007, and it was because of the Illinois EPA. They helped provide the funding on the disposal of this material. And I reached out to them actually about a week or so ago, and I said, hey, by the way, how much have we taken in Will County since this program began? And they told me that we have taken about 7,207 gallons of material. We put them in 55-gallon drums, and we try to put them in loose. I cannot even fathom how many pills that actually is. We also take inhalers, and so that's an additional to what I just said. And to give you an idea of what that means in the way of costs, so far they have spent $56,092 on our program. And so that's something that, because we were an early adopter, they said that they wanted to do this. And we said we'd like to partner with you, and we reached out. New Lenox stepped forward. We were able to provide this program, and if it weren't for people like Dan and the community of New Lenox showing other communities the way, I don't think that we would have nearly the success we have. There are 102 counties in Illinois, and we are leading the counties on this effort. So Cook County's been stepping up a lot lately. So we're going to get some competition, but so far the state has spent the most money and seen the most effort in take back here in Will County, and we should all be very proud of that.
Excellent. Marta, thank you so much for that. And again, as I've thanked you before, I'll thank you again for your partnership. We couldn't do this medication take back were it not for, for you and our friends at Will County. We really appreciate it. And we will continue to work hard to try to get these unwanted meds out of these homes. Okay, so with that, we will turn to our Q&A. I'll go ahead and just facilitate a few questions here, and then I'll unmute everyone. One of the questions I have is for the chaplain. Your PowerPoint was excellent. Would you be willing to share your PowerPoint? Is that something that I can send out when I send the email with the resources?
Yes, we do have my PowerPoint on our Rosecrans site webpage, where you can actually go and download it. So it is available for persons to be able to access and go in to download it. So yes, it would be available.
Excellent, thank you. And
Dan, I can send you the exact link that you'd be able to include if you'd like. So just as the chaplain said, it's on our website, on our resources page, and the full PowerPoint is there in downloadable form. So I'll make sure I send the exact link to be shared with everyone.
Thank you, Jen. That would be perfect. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know Marta answered the question there. There was a question about how do we find the medication take-back sites? And Marta put the answer to that in the checkbox. So again, the sites here in New Lenox are at the New Lenox Police Department. That's Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 o'clock, 8:30 to 5, and excluding holidays. And then we also have a collection site at the Walgreens here in town. The other question, this is for Necia. You referenced a website that you have. I'm not sure if it's a website or a blog, something like Help Me, Help Me. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, it's actually a Facebook page. It's a group. So it's a private group. You cannot see in there or read anything unless you're a member. So it's Help Me, which stands for Help Me, Help Myself by helping others. So I myself get a lot of fulfillment, a lot of growth from knowing that I'm helping others. So you can vent in there. There's a lot of resources in there. If anybody needs help getting into treatment, detox, mental health facilities, we have a lot of things pinned in there. And then also just if you need someone to talk to, there's always people available. I'm sorry, my daughter's coming in here. Yeah.
Awesome. So one more time, the name of the Facebook group?
I can post it. I'll type it in the comments.
Okay, great, thank you. And then this question is for Jesse. Jesse, if you have a loved one who you think is suffering from an addiction, what is the best way of going about trying to help your loved one that's struggling?
Boy, that's a magic question, isn't it? Well, you know, the thing is that's probably going to depend a lot on the relationship and on you having at least some idea of where that person is at as far as their concept of whether or not they have a problem. I know one thing you're going to want to try not to do is, you know, come at somebody in a way that's going to put them on their heels, in a way that's going to make them get defensive, which honestly, just even having the conversation, for a lot of us, when we're not ready to have the conversation, we're going to get defensive. That's what's going to happen. But if we can try to approach the situation in a non-judgmental, non-accusatory, making it clear that it is coming from a place of concern for that person and not a place of labeling them or judging them or, you know, calling them out for their behavior. I'm assuming we're kind of talking about this being the first time we're broaching the subject, because of course this tone starts to change when people have repeatedly had to have this conversation with a loved one. But if we're talking about broaching the subject for the first time, you know, maybe it's just a matter of opening the door, and you're kind of going to have to get a feel for where somebody's at, because, you know, all of us who whether we've been on that side of it or being on the side of it of being the person who's trying to help, if somebody isn't ready to have the conversation, if they're not ready to accept help, if they're not ready to change their behavior, there's only so far you're going to be able to take that conversation. You know, you can't want it for somebody, but you can create a space on your end that says, when or if you want to have this conversation, I'm here, you know. And if you can offer the resources and say, listen, you do what you want with them, but here's the information. And that's what I try to do with people, because, you know, people ask me a lot, because like Necia, and that's wonderful what she said about, you know, she recovers loudly, and so do I. And I think that that's very important. I know a lot of people are anonymous or quiet about it, and it's their personal business, but I choose not to be that way for probably a lot of the same reasons that Necia does, in that, you know, it's information that needs to be shared, because it's information that saves people when you've done it and you can offer that information. So, you know, a lot of times I see people clam up and get nervous when I tell them that I'm sober, or when they say, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm an addiction counselor because my other job is working in a restaurant. And immediately people look guiltily at their drink when I tell them. So I have to try to go, listen, you know, you do what you do. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to, but if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it, and we can talk about it in an open way, and you're able to say what you need to say, and I'm here to listen. And then if you would like the information, I can send you in that direction, you know. And that actually is probably easier with strangers than it is with a loved one. But I think the biggest piece of that is just going to be the way that you approach the person, and then knowing that if they're not trying to have that conversation, you are going to have to stop. You're going to have to pull back and respect their boundary. Unless it's a drastic situation and their life is in danger, you know, obviously that might have to be approached differently, but making it clear to them that you want to help them, and approaching it that way, I think is the best that we can do, and hope for their reciprocation.
Dan, can I add to that?
Sure.
Thank you, Jesse. That was great. I want to talk as a parent, because when you identify one of your family members who needs help, we're always looking at that person, not us. Mm-hmm. And I think the best thing that we can do in addition to is get education ourselves and get support, because when this becomes something in your family, you really don't have a background in it. It hits you in a way that's very personal, and so you need your own support system. You need to be in a group situation, or need to have a therapist, because you need to work out those feelings yourself, so they're not projecting them on your son or daughter or family member. And then you need to understand the disease. It's really important that you understand the science behind the disease, and not everything that you read on the media or everything that you hear other people telling their story, because everybody's story is not the same for I always like to put it, if you have heart disease, you're not going to ask your neighbor if he had heart disease and where he went and got, and then go ask your doctor, I want exactly what that person had, because, oh, that must be the same, because it's not. And so every individual suffers from addiction in a different way. We heard people talk about trauma. Trauma is hidden, trauma is very serious, and it can take years before we can get someone to open up about that. And until that happens, the pain isn't gone. So I just as an external person, as a helper person, get educated and get your own support system.
Great, thank you, Dr. Burke. That covers all the questions in the chat box. I'll open it up now if anyone has any questions for any of our panelists, Dr. Burke, Marta. Please go ahead and unmute yourself if you do have any questions. We'll spend a couple more minutes on Q&A.
Hey, Dan, it's Al Murray.
Go ahead, Al.
Hey, on November 3rd, I'm going to be an election judge, and there's going to be a lot of us busy that night. Is there some option on the Narcan training?
No, it's November 2nd.
Oh, I thought it was November 3rd. Sorry, I have November 3rd down.
Yeah, November 2nd, and then the distribution will be on November 4th, 2 nights later.
Okay, we're good then. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah,
Other questions?
I had a question for the chaplain, if I could.
Gloria, go ahead.
Would you say that if someone, who's been through grief and didn't go through any grief counseling, can it manifest itself into looking differently later? Like the person, it really changes them? Can you see that happening to someone?
I can certainly see that happen, because what often happens, as we know, loss continues to happen in various ways. What can also happen is compounded grief, because they've not resolved the one aspect of this particular loss. Now there's another loss that happens, and then there's another change that happens. So it can become very compounded, and it can manifest itself in certainly really dangerous ways that are extremely unhealthy and life-threatening. So I would certainly recommend talking about that and acknowledging it, and maybe even helping the individual understand you're still grieving this particular loss or event that have happened, and broach the subject about considering grief counseling or grief support.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I will show the PowerPoint for our resources. And let me know if everyone can see that. Not yet?
I can see it.
All right, excellent. And this is just more for the recording. Again, I will show this to, I'll send this to everyone in the form of an email probably tomorrow. And again, I want to thank Stephanie Masika from UChicago Medicine at Ingalls Hospital for putting these slides together. These are a lot of our partners that we have, through the Village and through our Safe Community Coalition. Again, it's their efforts that help us put presentations together like this. They're able to help us secure speakers and put these wonderful programs together. And again, we do have folks on the line here tonight from Rosecrans, from Gateway. Silver Oaks Behavioral Hospital is another great partner. Of course, Will County Substance Use Initiatives and all the wonderful things that Dr. Burke and her team do. And Hero, Jan Dabrowski is on the call tonight. Shortly, there'll be a great video. The Hidden in Plain Sight trailer, because of COVID, has not been available, but they got together with our folks here at the Village and made a great video. And we hope to have that video available shortly, which we'll share the link to so everyone can see all the different new items of paraphernalia and hiding places and such that kids are using these days. And again, Marta tonight, another one of our speakers. We're grateful to her for all the wonderful work that she does with unwanted medication. Takeback. Will County Health Department, Cindy Jackson has been a great partner. They have so many wonderful programs at the health department. We appreciate their participation always. The DEA, I know Pat Witkowski is on the call tonight. What a great resource to have. Pat is very active with our meetings and our task group meetings. So we're grateful to have our friends from the DEA on board. Ruby Johnson, Ruby's not here tonight, but Ruby does a wonderful job educating the community on vaping, e-cigarettes. We appreciate all of her efforts. And then Carla Scott is on tonight, D'Amico and Associates in Counseling. Carla is involved in a lot of different things and provides some great information to our coalition. So we certainly appreciate all of her efforts. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions before we wrap up? Again, I'll send this information along. Okay. Hearing none, again, I want to thank our wonderful speakers tonight and our folks like Dr. Burke and Marta, who added the additional information. All of you for being here tonight and the wonderful questions. We certainly appreciate that. And again, our goal is to try to get this into a form of a recording so that for those that missed this tonight, we can go ahead and send out a link and all of you can share it widely with all the great information that was presented. All right. With that, I will bring this Zoom video conference to an end. And thank you once again for being here. And all of you take care. Please stay safe. And we look forward to seeing all of you soon. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.